Most people think freedom means choosing what to buy, what to watch, and what to say online. But Michel Foucault would tell you that this is the greatest illusion of all, that modern society has mastered a far more elegant form of control. Not through whips or chains, but through invisible systems that shape what you believe, how you think, and even who you think you are. You don't need a dictator when the prison is inside your mind. You don't need bars when people police themselves. Today, obedience isn't forced, it's designed. It's coded into our schools, our workplaces, our social media feeds, our sense of morality. Every time you scroll, every time you post, every time you hesitate to speak your truth, you're participating in a system that rewards compliance and punishes resistance. Foucault saw this decades before the internet existed. He warned that modern power would not look like kings or armies, it would look like order, discipline, and normality. You wouldn't even see it happening because you would think it was you. So ask yourself, are you truly free or just a well-trained subject pretending to be one? Because the truth is, society doesn't want you powerful. It wants you predictable. Not a threat, not awake, not sovereign, just obedient enough to call your own cage freedom.
Michel Foucault was not the kind of philosopher who sat comfortably in the ivory towers of academia. He was more like a surgeon of the human soul, dissecting the quiet, unseen machinery that governs our lives. Born in France in 1926, Foucault grew up watching a world obsessed with control. Governments, prisons, schools, even hospitals, all designed not just to manage people, but to mold them. His obsession wasn't with power in the usual sense, kings, laws, or armies, but with the invisible threads that move through us every day, the subtle ways power teaches us who to be. He believed that the modern world had invented a new kind of domination, one that no longer needs violence because it works through our consciousness itself. Foucault called this the age of discipline. It wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about observation, about design, about systems so deep they felt natural. Imagine a prison shaped like a circle, cells lining the outer ring, a single watchtower in the center. The prisoner never knows when he's being watched, so he behaves as if he always is. That was the genius of Jeremy Bentham's panopticon. And for Foucault, it became the perfect metaphor for modern society. Because today, we live inside a digital panopticon. Our screens are the towers, our algorithms are the guards, and the fear of being judged, canceled, or misunderstood, that's the beam of the invisible spotlight keeping us still. Foucault's insight was brutal. Society no longer needs to force you into obedience. It just needs to make you believe that obedience is virtue. Look at school, for instance. You're taught not to think freely, but to think correctly. You're graded not for originality, but for accuracy. You sit, listen, repeat, and learn that authority is always above you. Teachers, institutions, systems. The goal isn't knowledge, it's conditioning. Then you graduate, and the pattern continues. You clock in at work, perform, comply, seek approval. Stay silent when your instincts scream otherwise, because that's what keeps you safe, employed, accepted. You learn to smile on command, to nod, to submit politely to systems that treat you like a replaceable part. Foucault called this the disciplinary society, a world where power no longer punishes the body, it shapes the soul. You don't fear pain, you fear rejection. You don't fear the whip, you fear losing your place in the system. And so you self-censor, you self-correct. You become your own warden. This, for Foucault, was the final form of power. Not domination from above, but compliance from within. A power so sophisticated, it doesn't even look like control anymore. It looks like normal life. He wrote about prisons, hospitals, schools, and asylums, not because he cared about their walls, but because he saw them as mirrors of the same design. Each one was built to monitor, categorize, and correct human behavior. Each one used language like health, discipline, progress, rehabilitation to justify conformity. Foucault believed that knowledge itself had become a tool of power. The ones who define what is true, healthy, or normal are the ones who hold the leash. Society creates its own moral vocabulary to maintain control, and because we crave belonging, we submit. Willingly. He called this fusion of knowledge and control power knowledge. The idea that the ones who decide what's true also decide what's acceptable. And once you accept their truth, you don't need to be forced anymore. You'll enforce it on yourself. That's the beauty and the horror of modern control. It doesn't need chains because it shapes your desires. It doesn't need violence because it molds your beliefs. Think about how often people edit themselves before speaking or post something just to be seen as good. We are desperate for approval, from institutions, from strangers, from digital ghosts. And that desperation makes us obedient. Foucault would say that every like, every comment, every rating system is a modern form of surveillance, a soft reminder that you're being watched, that you must behave correctly. The panopticon has become social media itself, wrapped in dopamine and marketed as connection. But what's the cost? The cost is authenticity. The cost is sovereignty. Because in this kind of society, rebellion isn't punished, it's pathologized. If you question the system, you're called toxic. If you resist, you're uncooperative. If you speak too loudly, you're unstable. And so the modern man becomes docile, not because he's weak, but because he's afraid of being seen as wrong. That's the world Foucault tried to warn us about, one where the deepest control doesn't look like tyranny, but like order, where power no longer needs to shout because it has learned to whisper. And that whisper over time becomes your inner voice, the one that tells you to stay quiet, the one that tells you to play safe, the one that tells you freedom is dangerous. But here's the truth Foucault wanted you to see. When society teaches you to fear your own strength, that's not a sign of progress. That's the oldest strategy of power there is.
Walk outside today, and you'll see no chains, no guards, no prisons. And yet people move like they're being watched. They speak carefully, post cautiously, live obediently. They call it being appropriate, but it's really fear dressed as virtue. Foucault's world didn't vanish, it just became digital. We live in a civilization that rewards obedience disguised as morality. You're not told to obey, you're told to align. You're not told to submit, you're told to comply for safety. Control has learned the art of rebranding. It no longer needs a tyrant, it has the crowd. Look around. Every screen is a pulpit, every influencer a preacher, every platform a cathedral of opinion. And somewhere in the noise, your own voice grows quiet, until you can't tell if your thoughts are yours or the system's. Foucault's theory of discipline predicted this perfectly. He said modern power doesn't punish rebellion, it dissolves it. It floods you with so much information, so much noise, that resistance feels pointless. It trains you to chase pleasure and acceptance, not freedom. And in this training, men have become softer, not in body, but in spirit. We are surrounded by the illusion of choice, but our desires are pre-programmed. The system doesn't need to cage you if it can seduce you. It just has to convince you that obedience is freedom, that weakness is kindness, that submission is enlightenment. That's the subtle genius of the age we live in, a world where rebellion has been turned into performance and truth into branding. You can scream revolution online all day, but if it fits neatly into the system's algorithms, it isn't rebellion, it's marketing. The system wants your fire, but only if it burns in the direction it allows. Foucault warned that this is how power mutates, not by suppressing freedom,
but by absorbing it. It learns your language, your ideals, your passions, and then repackages them into controlled rebellion. You get to feel powerful without ever threatening the system. Men today feel trapped, but they can't explain why. They sense the bars, but the prison looks like comfort. Everything is convenient, everything is instant, everything is safe. And safety, that's the new God. But here's what they don't tell you. Safety is the enemy of freedom. Because to be free, you must be willing to risk disapproval. To be strong, you must be willing to stand alone. Modern society doesn't fear strong men because they're violent. It fears them because they can't be easily managed. A man who can think, who can resist approval, who doesn't flinch under pressure, that's dangerous. That's Foucault's nightmare and his prophecy, that systems of control would one day eliminate danger by eliminating the kind of man who could cause it. Look at modern relationships. Most men have been trained to behave, to suppress instinct, to seek validation rather than respect. You're told to be nice, to be agreeable, to apologize for being masculine. The system rewards docility, not passion, not leadership, not depth. And so you adapt. You hide your edge, you silence your honesty, you become a mask. Because deep down, you've learned that being too real makes people uncomfortable. You've learned that truth doesn't trend, compliance does. But the price of that silence is your soul. Foucault would say that we've turned love into a form of discipline, not through force, but through expectation. The rules of what's acceptable shift constantly, keeping you in a perpetual state of uncertainty, always watching yourself, always managing your image, always performing correctness. The same thing happens at work. Corporations preach authenticity, but monitor everything you say. They tell you to bring your full self, while quietly punishing anyone who actually does. The open office becomes the modern panopticon, everyone visible, everyone judged, everyone pretending. And online, the digital eye never blinks. It watches what you like, what you post, what you delete. It knows your desires before you do. That's not coincidence, that's design. Foucault called this biopower, the way systems manage life itself by studying and shaping human behavior. In the past, power controlled your body. Now it studies your psychology. It learns your habits, then sells them back to you as identity. You think you're expressing yourself, but are you? Or are you performing the self the system trained you to be? You see it in politics too. Every side claims to fight the system, but both sides feed it. Outrage is monetized. Division is engineered. Your emotions are extracted like data. Because an angry population is predictable, and predictability is the raw material of control. Foucault understood this better than anyone. Control doesn't require force when it can predict your reactions. That's why the system wants you emotional, reactive, dependent. Because the more triggered you are, the less you think. The more approval you crave, the easier you are to direct. And the worst part, you'll believe it's your choice. Because control today hides behind compassion. It tells you it's keeping you safe. It tells you what to say so you don't offend. It tells you what to think so you don't suffer. It wraps obedience in the language of morality. But morality without freedom is just another cage. This is what Foucault saw, that the most terrifying form of power is the one that teaches you to love your chains. Every ad that tells you to be yourself is really saying, be what we approve. Every slogan that tells you to trust the system is really whispering, stop thinking for yourself. And every institution that claims to protect you is also studying you. We are not citizens in this system. We are data points, measurable, predictable, and monetizable. But here's the paradox. Even as the system grows smarter, it grows weaker because it depends on your compliance. It needs your attention, your fear, your silence, and the moment you see it for what it is, it loses power. That's the crack in the armor. That's where freedom begins, in awareness. Foucault never promised escape. He never said there was a perfect system waiting on the other side. He just urged us to see, to wake up from the hypnosis of modern life and recognize that what feels normal is often engineered. Once you see that, the world stops being innocent. Every rule, every trend, every truth becomes a question mark. And that's where your power returns, not by rejecting society, but by refusing to be unconsciously shaped by it. To be awake in Foucault's world is to become dangerous, not to others, but to the illusion that keeps others asleep. And that's what society fears most, the individual who can no longer be managed by guilt, approval, or fear. Because once you stop needing permission, you become untouchable.
Foucault's philosophy was never meant to comfort you. It was meant to awaken you, to make you feel the invisible strings that have been guiding your hands, your words, your thoughts. Once you see those strings, you have two choices: cut them or keep pretending they're not there. The first lesson is brutal but freeing. Every system that promises to simplify your life also narrows your ability to fight. It teaches you to prefer ease over effort, to choose pleasure over principle. The moment you surrender struggle, you become manageable. The second lesson: never obey passively. You will be told what to think, how to speak, and what to fear, all in the name of virtue. Society disguises control as morality. When you hear "be kind," ask who defines kindness. When you hear "trust the system," ask who benefits from your trust. Blind obedience, even in the name of good, is still slavery. The third lesson: protect the privacy of your mind. The world today wants transparency, not because it values honesty, but because it fears secrecy. It fears people who think independently, who hold ideas not meant for mass consumption. Your inner world is sacred territory. Guard it. Don't tweet every thought. Don't confess every wound. Keep a part of yourself untouched by the system, because what it cannot see, it cannot control. The fourth: question everything that feels automatic. When everyone moves in one direction, pause. Observe. Mass agreement is not truth. It's often programming. You don't have to oppose everything, but you must remain aware that most people believe not because they understand, but because they belong. If you can break that reflex, the need to belong, you become impossible to manipulate. The fifth: do not outsource your morality. Foucault's world thrives on conformity. Institutions, media, ideology, they all offer ready-made moral scripts. They tell you who to pity, who to hate, who to applaud. But a man without his own compass becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. Build your own sense of good and evil based not on what is popular, but on what is true. That will cost you friends, comfort, and applause, but it will buy you freedom. The sixth: turn discomfort into armor. The system's greatest power is shame. It trains you to feel guilty for being different, for being ambitious, for being masculine, for being skeptical. But guilt is just control dressed as conscience. If you learn to endure discomfort without apology, you strip the system of its favorite weapon. The moment you stop needing to be liked, you become untouchable. The seventh: control your attention or someone else will. Foucault would say modern power no longer needs chains because it has screens. Every notification is a tiny leash. Every algorithm, a quiet whisper guiding your attention where profit lives. When you reclaim your focus, you reclaim your life. Set deliberate boundaries. Choose when to look, what to read, what to care about. Attention is currency. Stop giving it to those who sell your weakness back to you. The eighth: speak truth even if it costs you. In ancient times, the Greeks had a word, parrhesia, meaning fearless speech. It was the courage to tell the truth in the face of power. Foucault admired this more than anything because truth-telling is the purest rebellion. When you speak truth, not for outrage, not for applause, but because silence feels like death, you become something rare, a man with integrity in a world of actors. The ninth, build strength in solitude. You cannot fight the collective hypnosis if you're terrified of being alone. Solitude is not loneliness, it's detox. It's the silence where your mind recalibrates, where you rediscover what you actually think. The system keeps you constantly connected because disconnection is dangerous. It breeds thought. Withdraw often, reflect deeply, return sharper. And the 10th, do not seek escape, seek awareness. You can't run from the system, not fully. It's in your job, your phone, your relationships, but you can see it. Awareness is the only rebellion that cannot be suppressed. Because once you see the pattern, you can no longer unconsciously obey it. Freedom doesn't mean living outside the cage. It means knowing where the bars are and refusing to bow to them. Foucault's wisdom is not a call to hate the world. It's a challenge to see it clearly. To recognize that control today rarely wears a uniform or carries a whip. It smiles, it reassures, it promises to protect. But beneath that smile is fear. Fear of the individual who thinks too deeply, speaks too honestly, and stands too still while the crowd moves. So build that stillness within yourself. Become a man who listens more than he reacts, who observes before he obeys. A man who can feel the weight of the system pressing on him and still walk upright.
Foucault's warning was never about politics or institutions. It was about something much deeper, the quiet death of the individual. He saw a world where men no longer needed chains because they would carry the cage inside their own minds. And look around, that world is here. No guards, no prisons, just a constant hum of conformity. You're free to speak, but only if you say what they approve. You're free to act, but only within invisible boundaries that no one dares to cross. You live in a civilization that calls itself liberated, yet every step you take has already been mapped. But freedom, Foucault said, begins with awareness. The moment you recognize the invisible design, you stop moving like a prisoner. You stop mistaking permission for freedom. You stop apologizing for being awake. The world wants you compliant because a compliant man is predictable. He will work quietly, consume endlessly, and die politely. But the man who sees through the illusion, he is the anomaly. He walks differently. He listens differently. He speaks with a weight that can't be faked. That man is dangerous not because he fights the system, but because he no longer belongs to it. To see as Foucault saw is to live between two worlds, one asleep, one aware. In the first, everything feels safe, simple, moral, and controlled. In the second, everything feels uncertain, raw, alive, but real. And that's the price of freedom, reality. It's not a life of peace, but of power, not comfort, but clarity. Foucault's truth is merciless. Power will always try to reshape you, to mold you into something docile and useful. But as long as you keep your mind sharp and your spirit ungoverned, it can never own you. You can live among the obedient without becoming one of them. You can play the game, but know it's a game. You can smile in public while remaining fiercely awake in private. That's what true rebellion looks like. Not chaos, not defiance. Awareness, precision, inner sovereignty. The system may watch you, label you, and misunderstand you, but it cannot possess a man who has seen the machinery behind the curtain. Foucault didn't give us hope in the traditional sense. He gave us something harder, the burden of consciousness, the knowing that once you've seen the truth, you can never unsee it. And maybe that's what it means to be truly free,
to walk through a world of sleepers carrying the fire of awareness in silence, to see every rule, every screen, every institution for what it really is, a mirror reflecting fear back at itself. The weak will keep obeying, the strong will keep pretending, but the awakened, they will simply watch, learn, and rise. Because the system cannot break a man who understands it. It can only fear him.